not live today, but that's cool.
Facebook decided we were not going live.
Facebook decided we were not going live today. For whatever reason, it is having technical difficulties. I swear it's not us.
For once, it's not us.
The technical difficulties are not on our end. But look, Dave, Seth, and David Hucks here from MyrtleBeachSC.com. Guys, a lot going on today, this week, really. Both in state politics, local politics. Let's get right to it. Seth, the legislature in Columbia talking about the budget. They passed I believe the second reading in the House of the $30 billion illegal state budget. Once again, legislators have broken the law, and which is a good law, by the way, a very clear, very transparent law that's on the books. And legislators have ignored it. They have broken the law. Section 1190 in our South Carolina code, not to get too wonky on y'all, but basically what it says is that the budget writing committees in Columbia, in the Senate and the House, have to meet together and hold joint open hearings and go through the governor's budget, right, 5 days after he introduces it. And what that does and what that means and what it would mean for us is that the legislature would have to go through line by line by line spending, how they're going to spend our money. They're going to actually go through and create a budget based on what works, what doesn't, and it's all out in the open so that we can all see how they are spending our money. And what they do every year, Seth, is they ignore that law. And they have their various excuses, and we've heard them. Our activists have sent us and forwarded us responses from the various and sundry politicians saying, what you don't understand is we don't have to follow that law, or the Constitution says something and the Constitution trumps what the Code of Law says. But at the end of the day, they don't follow the law, and what happens, Seth, is they spend more and more every year. They're going to spend $1 billion with a B more this year than they did last year. They're going to fund things and pet projects and things that we don't like or that we don't want, that don't reflect our values again this year. And it's all because this process is done behind closed doors, essentially, behind closed doors. And these decisions are made, David, with only the most powerful legislators with lobbyists get to decide how to spend $30 billion of our money. And every single year, spending goes up, government grows, government gets bigger, our roads are crap, our schools are the worst in the country, we pay the highest monthly electricity bills every year. Every year these things happen, and it's because, in a lot of part, Seth, they don't follow the law, and they don't show us how they're spending our money. So when they meet this week, and my favorite is when sometimes you'll see these legislators, they'll post on social media or Facebook the pictures of them at midnight, like, we're working through the night, y'all. This is a big deal. Look how hard we're working.
Spend your money.
That's right. That's right. And those are my favorite, by the way. Is those posts, right? And what they're really doing is they're just passing huge chunks of money that most of them have no idea where it's going or what it's doing. But man, they're working hard, burning the midnight oil last night to pass a $30 billion plus budget where that just simply does not reflect our values, and that is, again, breaking the law. They refuse to follow the law.
Right, and the point you make about it being a good law is important, right? Anytime that politicians and lobbyists can go to some dank, dark subcommittee room, inevitably when they come out, they're going to be spending more of our money and not helping the state.
On work hours.
Exactly.
This doesn't happen on Saturday at 3 p.m.
No.
Or Monday at 7:30 when people can actually go. Right. This happens Wednesday at noon.
Yep. Like I say, it's some subcommittee here we've never heard of, right? And when they come out, they have all this spending, all this pork, all this growing government, things that we don't want. And the best disinfectant for darkness is the light, right? And that's what Section 11-11-90 says, is clearly when you are spending the people's money, first and foremost, follow the process laid out. The governor submits a budget. It's not just for recreation or for fun and games. It's because that's where the process is supposed to start. Yep. Then you have open, transparent hearings that citizens can actually attend and see how their money is being spent. That has got to happen if we want to stop this every year having a bigger budget and a bigger budget. But I want to go to these excuses these guys use, right? And one came back, I think it was Richie Yao, right?
Yeah.
He came back and said, what you don't understand good citizen, is that the Constitution says that we can do all these subcommittee hearings, and the Constitution trumps the Code of Laws. Well, that's curious, because in my understanding, the Fourth Amendment should be protecting unborn children in South Carolina from being aborted. But somehow, when we're talking about the Constitution there, these guys want to whitewash it. But anytime they want to use the Constitution for their own benefit and use it as an excuse for doing things that we don't want, they'll cloak themselves in that Constitution. So it's a sad excuse, and we've got to hold them accountable.
Well, I think Gary Smith, State Representative Gary Smith from Greenville County, wrote back to one of our activists saying he evoked a constitutional provision that dealt with collecting revenue, right? So here these guys are spending. The budget is a document to spend our money. It's how they spend the money that we send them every year. And Gary cited a constitutional provision about the bills, like tax hike bills, the bills that collect, not spend, collect.
And they have to stop. They have to start the house.
They have to start in the House, and that's why they do it this way. Again, not a single one of them said, you know what, citizens, out of the thousands of people that contacted their legislators this week, their House members, not a single one of them said, you know what, you're right, we do need to be more transparent. We need to hold these hearings. I'm going to confront my leadership about it. David, we see it time and time again where so much of this spending, and again, we're talking about $30 billion. That's a lot of money. It's our money. And they spend it in ways that we don't want. Again, pet projects, and I can name them. You know, Seth, we discussed last year. The pet project, the legislator from Charleston, $500,000 to the Library Society in Charleston.
He's a bibliophile.
A member, by the way, an organization on which he sits on the board, right? Dwight Loftus in Greenville, sending $500,000 to the Children's Museum.
Right.
Again, all these pet projects, corrupt Hugh Leatherman, $7 million to Francis Marion University, where his daughter is on the Board of Trustees. Yep. He was a member of the Board of Trustees. They have a building on campus named after him. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we deal with all the time that get stuffed in there because they're not transparent about it.
Well, here's what I've seen. You have two different types of people in Columbia. You've got the cronies, the Leathermans, the Rankins, the guys who supposedly know it all, but what they know how to do is game the system. And then you've got the local yokel who got voted in, who really doesn't know what's going on.
That's right.
And he doesn't want anybody to know he doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
So he goes along to get along. So what we've got here is the know everything of how to game the systems and the know nothing.
Very few tiny slices.
Yes,
Yep.
and by the way, the know everything guys,
A handful.
maybe five, six
right.
people. And then you got the rest of them who are going, well, I don't want to look stupid on this, or I don't want to look dumb on that. So what we end up with is horrible legislation. And they're all looking around. You know, the system isn't working.
No, that's a great point, David. This is why, even with an illegal state budget, with one that is bloated, it overspends, with pet projects stuffed into it, up until yesterday, I believe we were still subsidizing Planned Parenthood in it.
Yep.
So the reason that,
We still might be, by the
well,
way.
yeah, we
The
still,
Senate's got a
we'll
vote
see,
on it, too.
we'll see how it turns out, and maybe the courts make us pay anyway, right?
Right.
We'll have to see how it plays out. But to your point, David, the fact that you have just a handful of very powerful folks, and then the rest of them just go along to get along, is why we end up, even though this budget is illegal, even though it's big spending, it got voted on second reading, was it 112 to 1?
One voted against
One
it.
Republican,
Jonathan
one
Hill.
conservative, right? Of all the
What's his
supermajority,
name?
Jonathan Hill.
Oh, that's his name.
Right, yeah, the good guy, the only one to vote against this was Jonathan Hill and Anderson.
They don't like him, right?
No, and this is the same Jonathan Hill, by the way, that I believe Russell Fry was saying, I can't possibly support your Second Amendment rights because Jonathan Hill, the only one conservative in Columbia, has his name on the bill. That Jonathan Hill. But with all these Republicans, with all the supermajority, we can only get one guy to vote against it. Now, we'll say a couple of Republicans, I believe it was 3 of them, decided to take the even worse way out, which was to not even vote on the budget.
Yeah.
Right.
They just didn't vote.
They're just going to punt on that vote. Now, the most important thing you do every year in the State House as a legislator is vote how to spend our money. And then when it came to that vote, you didn't have the courage to vote against it. And you didn't
Or
have
the courage to vote for it.
or to vote for it, right? You want to straddle the fence. That, it's, first of all, to have only one person vote no is terrible in South Carolina. Secondly, to have these folks who think it's acceptable to punt on the most important vote they will make all year is also unacceptable, and they have to be held accountable as well.
Well, we talked about, you mentioned gun rights, and so, David, I want to give everybody an update with, an issue that we've been like a dog on a bone, which is constitutional carry, which is permitless carry. Basically, restoring our Second Amendment rights here in the state of South Carolina. And that bill is H3456, and y'all, it is still rotting away in committee.
And likely will.
And will until you know enough pressure is put on these politicians to do something about it. But it still is sitting in committee. And again, as we mentioned before, and you've written about it, Chief Whip of the GOP caucus in the House is a guy named Russell Fry here in Horry County, and he has basically told people, I mean, straight out, I think the idea is good, but you know what? I'm not going to support that bill because I don't like Jonathan Hill. I don't like the co-sponsor of that bill, which is absolutely absurd. I mean, it's a slap in the face. It's worse than even just saying, no, I can't support that, because at least own up to it, right? At least own up to, this is playground. So you're not going to recognize my constitutional God-given right because of some kindergarten, first grade brawl? I mean, that's absurd. It's ridiculous. These are our rights we're talking about. We're not talking about some bill. We're not talking about naming some street or road or playground. We're talking about our constitutional rights. And these guys treat it like, it's a first or second grade brawl, which is ridiculous.
Well, here's the truth. I'd love to get down to the brass tacks. They were our rights. Now they're not our rights until we demand they make them our rights. And that's the reality. They've taken a right that the Founding Fathers gave us away, and we've got to demand they give it back to us.
No doubt.
Real quick, let's close up the loop on the state stuff.
Yep.
Roads. And again, we're like a dog on a bone on these roads. We want to follow the money. We want to know, hey, they jacked up the gas tax hike on us 2 years ago, 2017, last session. They increased the gas tax by 12 cents, 72% tax hike. And they said they were going to fix the roads. These legislators in Columbia said they were going to fix the roads. Now, I don't know about y'all, but at the end of the day, man, the roads are getting worse, it seems like. And so they did this, the SCDOT did this pothole blitz, right? This government PR campaign.
With our money.
With our money. They went out to the mainstream media and they covered it, and they had all the trucks out, and all the 9 yards. Right, that's right. The hard hats, the flak jackets, all the rest. They dressed it up to the nines, and then when the nerve asked for a report, a county by county report, saying, hey, you know what? Y'all spent millions of dollars on this pothole blitz. Okay, what are the results? County by county, tell us. How many potholes did you fill in each county? Where were they? What did they do? What's the condition of the roads? Where are they at now? What's going on? They said they did not do it. They did not, either they didn't keep track of it, and they just went out and throw money in literally into holes, or they're hiding it from us, and they don't want us to know.
The numbers they gave us are faulty, right? I'm pulling them up right now, real fast.
Those numbers, so they said they did 53,000.
Yeah, 57,300 potholes from January 10th to February 19th.
Okay.
Right?
Right. $3.6 million of our money. They said 53,000. So first of all, do the math on that, y'all. Like
57,000.
Okay, in 60 days. So they're basically saying they did almost 1,000, repaired almost 1,000 potholes a day. I just can't believe that. But to not tell us how, you would think today with today's technology that these guys are going there when they're repairing roads or they're fixing roads or filling potholes, whatever they're doing, right? That they're sitting there with an iPad, checking things off, putting it into a database so that we know down to the nickel exactly where our money was at. Because David, the reason I bring this up is this is what these legislators, these politicians promised us when they passed this tax hike. They promised us when they passed that gas tax hike, they were going to fix our roads, they were going to repair our bridges, they were going to do it. But they're not doing that, obviously. That's pretty clear. The second thing is they're not even keeping track of the money we send them. I mean, it's a double whammy. It's a slap to the left and a slap to the right. Is not only are we not going to fix your roads, we're just not going to tell you how we're spending our money either.
And they're hoarding the majority of it. They spent what, $3 million?
3.6 million.
3.7 million.
Just that.
Guys, just so you know, they're approaching the 600 million-ish,
Right.
5 to 600 million-ish collection. They're hoarding, they're banking away this money, and that, from my perspective, anytime you give government and bureaucrats a slush fund, look out.
Yeah.
And I'm just telling you, it's coming. Watch out.
Well, stay with you.
All
Let's
right.
talk about the slush fund. Because you mentioned that slush fund, and
why they're trying to hold the money.
and why they're trying to hold the money.
Well, now listen, here's the deal. $500 million laying around, and just for our case, just the last 10 days, 3 coastal cities raided the SCDOT fund that former Chairman Lazarus signed with SCDOT, about $1.8 billion, $2.4 billion. They throw those two numbers around. So because I'm in the news, I kept waiting for Alan Clemens, Luke Rankin, Tom Rice to start screaming. Because, hey, you just gutted our key initiative. I mean, come on, guys. These guys said nothing. I'm like, why are you so silent on this? Wouldn't you be upset if someone just defunded your $1.8 billion project? Pet project. So yesterday at Myrtle Beach City Council meeting, the council announced, hey, we're putting $7.5 million towards this new road. And I'm going, I get it. The coast wants to control the county. Guys, they always have. And they want to control the money, which they did, that most of us collected there, and they want to control the county. So, hey, we put up our $7.5 million. Now, county, which is meeting this Tuesday, what are you going to do now? We've done our part. What you've actually done is you raided the county's coffers. You took a portion of that money and put it towards I-73. And here's what you're going to ask. Is Clemens, Fry, they're all behind this. Here's what they want. They want the county to at least match that 7.5 or double it. Problem. The 1.5% hospitality tax is largely collected now in Sockasty, Carolina Forest, Longs, Conway, Aner. So you're asking county taxpayers through a penny tax to 2-to-1 fund your road, which, by the way, is going to be built in a flood zone and also is not going to cost $1.8 to $2.4 billion. It doesn't connect to I-95. It stops at the county line. Here's the real good news, and I promise you're going to see this. After they strong-arm the county into doing what they want done on the coast, you're going to see Hugh Leatherman or Luke Rankin. We've got a pledge from the State Infrastructure Bank to bond the South End, which means everyone's going to pay for it.
Well, and look, we've known that all along, which is why we oppose this stupid project. It is, and by the way, I mean, David is right on the financial end. You're absolutely right. Here's what I'll tell you, Seth, and what we've been talking about from just the citizens' perspective is this thing is unnecessary. I mean, this road is not going to, there's been no evidence whatsoever presented at any time, at any place. All the politicians that back this road have never shown one shred of evidence that it's going to reduce traffic, that it's going to make life easier for citizens that already live in Horry County, or that
It's going to help you evacuate from a hurricane.
that's right. Well, and it may help you evacuate, but as David pointed out and wrote about this last year after Hurricane Florence, the proposed route was literally underwater, and to upfit it would have cost
$6 billion.
right, $6 billion. So again, it's not only that this road, the funding sources aren't there, and that it's astronomical costs. There's absolutely no evidence that it's needed at all.
And the people don't want it.
And that the people don't want it, and it's going to take away from fixing our other roads, which is desperately needed.
One last point. I want to make this. One last point of note. The compromise that Lazarus worked out left $18 million a year for county improvements. Guys, that compromise is gone. Those funds are gone. So when they're asking the county to kick back now, and they will be asking, there's nothing for the residents in this deal. That hospitality tax now is nothing more than an I-73 slush fund to match the city slush fund, and I'll go with probably a state infrastructure bank slush fund.
Well, I know you're going to be following the money and keeping track of this and keeping a watch on it and giving folks a way to be empowered by it, but it's a disaster, as are most of these boondoggle pet projects.
It's a constant fight. That's the thing with these. When some people like Mike Wooten stand to make a ton of money from this, right? They are not going to go away, and so it takes. We say it all the time: the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Well, the cost of not having I-73, right? If you don't want to pay the $6 billion for that road to be underwater, then you've got to stay on top of these guys day in and day out, because we sleep for a moment, as we're seeing with this scheme they're pulling out. You know, we thought we were all celebrating when the city started pulling back their money. Now we're seeing just another step in the scheme, right? So it's a boondoggle, it's expensive, it's unnecessary, but they are going to keep fighting for it, and we've got to keep fighting back.
That's right. All right. And no transparency. That's exactly right. The county sled Eldridge fiasco, debacle, circus, whatever you want to call it, right? Embarrassment, as Sharon said. What the heck is the latest? Give us an update, because this is, look, a lot of folks watch us from across the state, right? And this sort of, and I wanted to provide some context statewide, because we were reading an article just on the way over here, okay, in Greenville County, right? They're dealing with their administrator, some issues there. I mean, you know, forget the guy that was, he was a part of a lawsuit, a sexual harassment lawsuit, I think, right? Or sexual assault lawsuit, but neither here nor there. The county council hired him and paid him $300,000 a year, and then they just they found out the contract was null and void, or what it was, I mean, invalid. But I mean, but this is part of, and you've talked about this over and over again. But y'all, this is part of what our politicians do to us, is they bring in these administrators, these bureaucrats, who have they give them immense amounts of power, right? And they end up, you know, getting power, and really what you saw play out with this whole thing with Johnny Gardner, Chris Eldridge, the whole debacle circus, was they're fighting over money and power. Really, that's what it comes down to. They're fighting over money and power. Eldridge was hired, right? Mark Lazarus, the former county council chairman, brought him on. It was his buddy, it was his guy, it was his protector. And when he lost, Eldridge kind of lashes out, and this was part of that lash out, was to try to really destroy the incoming county council chair before he ever took office. But the power, the immense amount of power this bureaucrat had, y'all didn't elect Chris Eldridge. Y'all didn't elect him. He's not elected. He's an appointed bureaucrat. But the immense amount of power that he has, because of the power that essentially the politicians have given away to him, is incredible. And so, David, we talk about this all the time. It's really about citizens taking control. You're starting to see that here. But what is the latest? Give us the latest update on this whole circus.
Well, and you know, I need to be careful what I say. I've talked with some of these 6 that voted for him, and honestly, they voted
to keep him, right?
They voted not to fire him,
right,
which is essentially a vote to keep him. They kind of need to find a way to get him gone now. And here I'm gonna shoot straight here with you guys, and I know some councilmen are probably watching. So I've been in office. I've been elected. I've been in office for 5, 7, 8 years. And there's this county administrator, but just by the force of life, he knows some things about me, about some things I voted on, about some things that have gone down. He doesn't know much about Bellamy, because Orton Bellamy was never a councilman before. So he can't do anything to Bellamy. He knows very little about Johnny Gardner. Johnny Gardner's never served in the private sector. But some of these other guys and Eldridge have had a lot of executive sessions, let's just say that. So, that is what it is. So they want to really pay him to leave. They do. That's the truth.
So there's going to be a payoff at some point.
One problem with that, the chairman doesn't want to pay him a dime. So they've got to negotiate with Eldridge, and they've got to turn around and negotiate with Johnny Gardner, Johnny Gardner.
What's going to happen?
I think there's going to be a grand compromise, and I really think there is. I think his days with Horry County are numbered. I think there's going to be some grand compromise. But interdispersed into all of that, we've seen this divide now. There's a divide. I call them the Lazarites and the Gardnerites. And it's really county and coast. So what we're going to have to do here is heal this bridge in county government, or maybe it's good they're all divided. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is it good if they're all working as one, as a team, or is it?
Okay, so Explain that.
The only
Never.
bipartisan is bad.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's. I think what. And I don't know. I'm not going to comment on this specific
Right, I got
issue.
you. Tell us
I
about
don't know.
government in general.
But in general, divided government, right? And that's the way that the founders set up our federal government, was that you have these different branches and you have these very equally powerful but equally ambitious parts of government. And it's, by the way, it's the problem with our state government, right? All of the power is concentrated in the legislature. There are no checks and balances, right? The governor is not weak. The governor is weak constitutionally. The power is in the hands of a few legislators. But in general, I love divided government because, like I said, if they're equally ambitious and they were equally powerful, they're going to go at each other's throats all the time. And what's going to happen is that gives citizens more power, right? We have the leverage over those ambitious, equally ambitious, equally powerful branches of government. So, yeah, I mean, look, anytime it's 12-0 or 9-0 or whatever, you always have to be suspicious of that result.
I mean, look at the budget.
Right, that's exactly right. The state budget was 112-1. I mean, here they're obviously breaking the law. There's no doubt about it. They'll even admit it to you. They're breaking the law. But all of them are breaking the law, so it's all okay.
No, I agree. I think that it would be wonderful, idealistic, right, if every single person in Columbia, on our county councils, on our school boards, if they all felt exactly like we do, and they just went down there and did the right thing. That would be fantastic, right? But I think it was Madison who said if men were angels, government would be unnecessary, right? And so it is the divided government that protects our rights. When they are all working in lockstep, it's usually for tyranny. Like I say, you see with the budget this week. When they go down there, they break the law and just lock arm in arm and say, we're united. But that doesn't make me all warm and fuzzy inside. It means they're united against taking my money and taking my rights. So I'm all for divided government and fighting for what I believe in and trying to give voice to that.
Okay, guys, it is a town hall, and since we have Sharon here, would y'all mind if we brought her up and got her thoughts on this? No, hey, Sharon.
No, you're the expert.
Come on up, Sharon. Guys, if you don't know Sharon Pollard, she's pretty informed. For a local resident, I would say extremely informed. And I'd like to get her input on this. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi.
We know she knows, so let's know what she knows.
Sometimes I know too much.
So what's going on? What's your take on this?
My take on the county council, I certainly agree with both of you that we do need a divided government. It doesn't work if they all agree on the same thing. But if they don't have a base of ethics, none of it works. And what happened in county council was a failure of ethics. We still, to this day, do not know who is all involved. It can't just be one person. There's too many questions that have not been answered. Who gave it to Fitz News? Who decided to tape it? It was a lunch meeting for the very first time, a casual lunch meeting.
Wait, Sharon, are you suggesting that the investigators at SLED did not do a thorough job, or that they're withholding information?
I don't know.
It wouldn't
And
be
that's
that time.
and honestly, that is the problem. If I don't know, there's thousands. I know 80,000 voted for Johnny Gardner, and there's 80,000 thinking I don't know either. I can't answer that because I don't know, but I know it's more than one person. Why did they want this tape? Why did Karada do this 5-page email? Did he do it by himself? Just on the seconds of tape? Eldridge was the only one that saw anything wrong with it.
And here's
Another question I have, and y'all can answer this, but why did SLED, and I don't know if you can answer, but why did SLED just like lickety-split just decide they're going to investigate this at the drop of a hat when Eldridge requested? But when we request SLED investigate certain things, holy man, you have to go through hell and high water to even get them to answer a request. So that's my question to this too, is like, why was SLED or I don't know the involvement of the solicitor, but why were they just at a moment's notice, they came in, swooped in, and decided that this warranted an investigation. I don't even know, now that we have the results, if it even warranted an investigation.
That was the problem in the beginning.
Yeah.
It should have never went to SLED.
I don't think so.
It should have went to the 12 councilmen. They should have brought the sheriff in. We have a police chief. We pay them. They couldn't have looked at it and said, this is nothing.
Yeah.
I don't know why SLED was brought in unless people know people. That's all I can say.
I got a couple. Sharon, I got a couple of questions for you. First of all, it was told to what, 4 councilmen, not the 12?
Right.
So 4 councilmen knew, one of which was Mark Lazarus. So we're gonna play pretend for a moment. Let's pretend you're Mark Lazarus. Let's pretend you just lost an election to Johnny Gardner, and you're asked if you should have this sent to SLED by Chris Eldridge. Should you recuse yourself?
Me, as Sharon, absolutely. Me as Mark Lazarus, I don't know, you better do what you think best. We just don't know, and that's the problem. We don't know why a few councilmen were in on it, and we don't know why this was sent to SLED or how Fitz News knew it was sent to SLED. That big question.
Let me say this too, just chime in. This whole thing, and you mentioned about ethics, and it's funny, we were having the conversation before it got on about really just human nature, right? And especially these politicians, they have a lot of power, they have access to a lot of money. Ethics, and I'm not going to disparage every single politician, but ethics is not something that most politicians, the way that we define ethics or transparency is not what most of those politicians, either in the state house or in the county courthouse, have. That's why we have laws set up in place to deter from illegal activity, right? There's deterrences that are in place that protect us and protect our rights. And I would say that in South Carolina, we're fairly unique in that our ethics laws and the ability to apply criminal law to political situations is incredibly weak and incredibly filled and riddled with loopholes. And I think that, I guess and I don't want to minimize this situation. I'm just as intrigued by David's writings on this and Paul Gable's writings as anybody else. It's all fascinating. However, I feel like the ultimate solution, quite frankly, is just transparency. It's transparency on from the minute these guys decide to run, knowing how they earn their income. And I don't care how much. I don't really care about numbers. I don't want to know how much they make. If they're wealthy, that's great. If they're not, I don't care. Right? I don't care how much you make. I just want to know from whom you make it from. Right? From whom do you make your money? What are your sources of income? That way, I can determine whether or not there might be a conflict of interest, or you're worth the risk on whether there might be illegal behavior down the road, right? So I think that's the key to kind of all of this. Is what we want is obviously we want ethical government, but we're never going to get ethical politicians, right? What we want is, we can try, we can strive, we go into the voting booth, we demand it. I don't say we don't, but what I'm saying is, there needs to, what we really want and what we really need are laws in place that when these guys go out of their lane and they either break the law or they violate ethics, that, hey, there is something to hold them accountable for that, and right now, there just isn't.
There is nothing, and I just have one more point, and the thing of this whole thing is Johnny Gardner is an innocent man, and he has never been a council chairman without a shadow over his head. And this is what I think was driving them. Yep. And those councilmen that voted to keep him, a lot of them are business owners. If they had an employee in their company do the exact same thing, would they keep them? And that is what the problem is.
One last thing I want to say on this subject, and we can let it go. So you got people like Gary Loftus saying, I didn't see where he did anything wrong. I'll use his language. He was damned if he did, damned if he didn't. Well, here's 2 things he did, Gary, that were wrong. He told you about it, but if you're Danny Hardy, he didn't tell him. And if you're Paul Prince, he didn't tell him. And if you're Al Allen, this man made an executive decision to call in SLED without bringing the full council together and getting them to decide this matter. So he was Rambo. He was Rambo out there. Number two, one of you five, Tyler Servant, Mark Lazarus, Gary Loftus, who else? Eldridge, and one more. There was five that were told. One of you five leaked this thing to SLED. There just wasn't enough time to get this all throughout the community. Decision was made at 9:55 or 59, somewhere in there, and within minutes, it's all over Fitz News. Guys, there just ain't a lot of time. So, one of you five leaked it. So, I don't have a problem calling in SLED. I really don't. As long as they're looking at this thing and it's quiet. We called in SLED to look at the Horry County schools in 2015 because of some decisions they made with this first floor energy. We just found out about that SLED investigation a week or so ago. Why? They kept it quiet. Why was it so important for one of you five to leak this to the media? And if it was Eldridge, and honestly, I believe it was, those are two things he did that would demand his immediate termination.
Well, Sharon, thank you so much. Thank y'all for what you're doing, and keep an eye on these guys. Don't the dog on a bone. You can't let go of this. That's right. Eternal vigilance. No, thank you for what you're doing. Appreciate it. Thank you for support. Well, let's quickly talk about, because I know we got to jump here. Let's quickly talk about the home rule. You're starting to report on this. Tell us what you know. There's some issues going on in Columbia. They want more power, more control. Give us the 411 on that.
Okay, so if you live in the city of Myrtle Beach, turn the volume up. So there's these business owners on Ocean Boulevard who sell CBD oils, who were selling vape, nicotine-like products, and I don't use any of those things, by the way. But the city decided last year they shoehorned a 2017 first reading of a document. They basically took it, completely reworked it, called it the second reading, and said, hey, you can't sell these products anymore. Well, the merchants sued. Well, the state looked at this and went, wow, this is weird. Cities shouldn't be able to just basically put certain small merchants out of business through new zoning changes when they've been selling the products for some time, which they had been. So all of a sudden, the House decides to take this measure up. I forget the House bill number, but look it up. It's on our website. They said, we're gonna do this. So the House goes to vote on it. Brenda Bethune and Amy Prock show up and go, hey, home rule, home rule, home rule. Here's the deal with home rule. The idea of home rule is government that's most local is best government. By the way, I totally agree with that. The Myrtle Beach conundrum is Myrtle Beach city government is working aggressively to put certain small business owners on Ocean Boulevard out of business because the properties are old, and they are. The buildings were built in the 60s, and the land is more valuable than what the current revenue, tax revenue, the business is bringing in. They could run them off, bulldoze the building, bring in one of their crony buddy investors, and build a high rise or some big concept, and bring in more tax revenues for the city, especially because the Israeli merchants refuse to do a TIF. For those of you who don't know what a TIF is where I agree with you that every dollar that's collected in this area has a special purpose that goes to the city. It's a partnership. A TIF is nothing more than a city-private partnership of its own taxation methods. So the merchants won't agree to a TIF. Their businesses aren't bringing the revenue the city wants. So the city's trying their best to run them off the property by drying up their business. Now, the Senate's taking it up on Thursday in committee, and I'm told it's going to get voted out of committee and it's going to go to the floor. There's this organization called the Municipal Association of Cities. By the way, these are municipal associations of counties, cities. They're liberal groups These are where we birth the Eldridges of the
That's
world.
right, yeah,
They're where you birth the Petersons and the Eldridge, and they're all sing out of this very left-wing agenda. They have meetings in San Francisco, and they all talk about their little groups, and they lobby hard, and they'll be lobbying the Senate hard to make sure that home rules applied here. Because I'm close to this, I have so many it bothers me. I'm for home rule. I'm opposed to what the city's doing to these merchants. So you give the state this much power, Dave, and you can talk about this. Will they abuse the power down the road?
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, the state has tremendous power. The legislature has tremendous power. We keep going back to it. The legislature, there really is no branches of government. There's no, the South Carolina government doesn't look anything like the United States Constitution, right? There aren't 3 equal branches of government. There's one branch of government that allows the other 2 to exist. And so, yeah, let me say this. In general, home rule is a good thing. It is, right? It empowers the local citizens the most. But
It's only good in the most.
that's right.
Home rule is only good. And home rule is only effective when the people rule at home, right? We think of local government, state government, and federal government as, or city, county, and state government as these 3 different entities that should be protecting us. But right now, they're basically 3 different vultures arguing which is to pick more of the carcass right now, right? So I think that I would fight for home rule, because once you give it away, you never get it back. But it just hammers home the point, and you guys know this. You've got to take back control of your local government.
Okay, so I'm going to speak to this because I've been in the tourism industry for a long time. So, the city of Myrtle Beach gets most of its taxes from a TDF it passed and tourist-related taxes. They charge 18,000 homeowners who don't live here but own a condo here that's rented. They charge them a $250 license, a couple of million, $4.5 million. They just raided the county coffers, and now they've got a few extra million, $12 million going in there. The local resident does not fund Myrtle Beach government because Myrtle Beach government is funded through largely tourism. Therefore, the bureaucrats and those elected have actually bought off the local residents. And here's how they did it. We're going to take this tourist tax that we collect on, and we're going to give you a rebate on your home for these tourists that are paying. It's really and truly stealing from the tourists and giving it to the locals. It's no taxation without representation. I read that was a bad thing somewhere. I don't know where.
I think there was a revolution.
So the problem that the residents and the merchants are finding is city government could care less about their opinions, their ideas, and that's why home rule's not working in Myrtle Beach. How do we fix that?
It's the simple but very hard way.
Well, yeah, tourists may fund the government, but the citizens get to vote for the government.
Right.
At the end of the day, it is yours.
It's the simple but hard answer, right? Which is you have to take control of your government, and that's not easy. It's not easy, but you have to do it. There's no other way than that.
Let me help you with that. So right now we've got 3 incumbents, Mary Jeffcoat, a guy named Mike Chestnut, and a guy named Philip Render. They aren't running. They haven't announced they're running. But they're campaigning. They're going to every neighborhood watch. They're going to every city meeting. And they're campaigning, but they're not running. In August, they'll announce. When they announce, the tourism industry will kick several hundred thousands of dollars of campaign money into their campaigns. And it'll be a sprint, a 3-month sprint for anyone who wants to run against them with all this money. Meanwhile, they've been out campaigning since February at every home watch meeting. Guys, it's a stack that.
It is, but it isn't. Because if you're going to get what you want, if you're going to have resident citizen control of the government, the residents and citizens have to control it. And unfortunately, there's no white knight that's going to come in. There's no real big law that's going to stop. And, whether it's, we talk about this all the time, but, term limits or constitutional convention or, campaign finance laws, none of them are white knights. they're not going to save us. The only thing that's going to save us is us, and us taking control. And I know that's frustrating, and I know it seems impossible, but that's the truth.
So to the retirees who live in Market Common, who live in Del Webb, who live in Grand Dunes, I say this to you. And I'm looking you right in the camera and asking you this. How much is that tax credit costing you? Because let me say this to you. If you believe that out-of-town homeowners should subsidize the cost of in-city homeowners' real estate values, if you believe that tourists coming to the beach, and by the way, the numbers are falling in Myrtle Beach because of this very reason. If you believe that tourists coming to the beach should fund homeowner real estate credits, then look at our downtown area. Look at what this stuff has done to downtown Myrtle Beach. We've had no improvements. City government's trying to control everything. They want only the footprint they want in a partnership with themselves. There's a cost to this free stuff. It sounds free. It looks free. Hey, some of you are getting $3,000, $4,000 homeowner tax credits. I'm aware of that. And when they go to these meetings, the first thing they talk about is your tax credit that they gave you. Guys, this thing comes with a cost. And hey, if Myrtle Beach is going to continue to run this way, it's going to continue to run this way. It's just very expensive.
Look, we're going to wrap things up here. David, thanks a bunch. Thank you all for coming out. Next week, Water Cooler Wednesday. We'll be back at noon. We got a lot working on, obviously, this budget fallout, but we're going to get back to our gun rights, our speech rights, all those good things. We've got a whole bunch of that coming.